Good afternoon. This is Sherry Garrett. I am working on a presentation for EDU643 instructional design. My presentation is for my website, which is the American Civil War, General Robert E. Lee's Terms of Surrender. My introduction states that my name is Sherry Garrett. I'm an educational technology student preparing for collegiate instruction in technology and child development, both in web-based and college curriculums. I've had 18 years of teaching experience in the educational field. I specialized in education and child development. I am working on the creation of an interactive website design that meets the needs of current day students, and it is very important to me. I did an intensive analysis of needs for this. The Michigan Department of Education provided the 2015 statewide MSTEP summative test results, which were administered last year in the spring of 2015. They were administered to grades 5, 8, and 11th grade students. The 2015 MSTEP data provides a baseline for future years. I was able to download the MSTEP data for social studies, which is on the screen. This graphic demonstrates the needs for increased understanding within the domain of social studies within Michigan students. Knowledge levels gain as the students progress to higher grades. So they move from basically partially proficient with nearly 60% up to proficient with 32.9%, and advanced students were 10.9%. So there is a definite gain within it, but there is a definite need for more. My determination of educational need, there's a deviation of negatives 56.1 points between where students should be and where they are within current assessments. This demonstrates an educational need to improve students' assessment scores and critical thinking skills. Learning is an accumulative process, as stated by Gagné in 1977. The goal is to strive toward a realistic proficiency goal. My goal statement for my study is 85% of course students will critique the Civil War terms of surrender for Robert General Lee, including the effect the terms had on reuniting the nation within an argumentative essay. The Michigan standards I chose was 8U4.2.1, comparing Northeast and the South to make a comparison and contrast the social and economic systems of the Northeast and the South with respect to geography and climate and the development of agriculture, including changes in productivity, technology, supply and demand, and price, and industry, including entrepreneurial development of new industries such as textiles. And cotton is the main textile that we found in the South. 8U5.2.2 is make an argument to explain the reasons why the North won the Civil War by considering the critical events and battles in the Civil War and the political and military leadership of the North and the South. My objectives were analyze historical data within General Ulysses S. Grant's online memoirs on the American Civil War, comparing the objectives and strategies of the Union and Confederate armies. Number 2 is summarize the communications from President Abraham Lincoln through Union General Ulysses S. Grant to Confederate General Robert E. Lee and the Army of Virginia. Objective 3 is make comparisons between General Grant and General Lee's strategies during the negotiations in regards to the effects the negotiations had on the future of citizens, agriculture, industry, and the reconstruction of the United States to come. Prerequisite skills that are seen on my learning map. This is within my Weebly site. Generalized causes, why the war was fought, discuss and debate the debate over the direction of the country, understand the effects of the compromise of 1820 on the country. They need to interpret criteria on Civil War economic resources, both North and South. They have to have an understanding of the Union and Confederate objectives and strategies. They need to know changes the Emancipation Proclamation created in the nature of the war for former slaves. How the Civil War influenced the treatment of African American soldiers in the Union and Confederate armies. Design, process, and development. I utilize Weebly as my primary resource instrument for the creation of this interactive website. I first created a basic storyboard to begin the process to determine the general layout of the design. In a lot of areas, I worked from the back to the front of the design period because I had my goal and then I worked from there. My instructional design proposal was utilized as a skeleton to format the storyboard. The learning map was utilized to designate each page's design to meet the needs of my lesson and the requirements of the project. With the information received in my instructional design proposal, it was determined that I needed to reduce the number of Michigan standards to ensure that I could meet all of them within the final project and match my objectives. I elaborated within my learning map the prerequisites that are required knowledge for the students to complete the project. I basically worked on those to ensure that they were very understandable. As I entered phase 2, I kept in mind the considerations that I had to address as I completed this learning resource, keeping in mind that it is an interactive online lesson for students and as a teaching tool for instructors. The home page was created with a descriptive text of what this unit of study is about, graphics on the Civil War, a description of how to navigate the numbered pages, and the listing of resources to be within the pages. Next, I designed the standards and objectives page. I utilized several photos I had taken in 2013 from the Gettysburg and the Manassas battlefields in Virginia throughout the lesson, as well as those I have downloaded with Creative Commons licensing. The Civil War Learning Map was inserted into page 3 to increase student understanding of the prerequisites they have within their self-knowledge from previous lessons. The hyperlink to Ulysses S. Grant's memoirs was inserted on page 4, along with an embedded student analysis page to complete an essay format as a study guide when reading the selected pages. I created a self-correcting flashcard study activity within a hyperlink on Quizlet for students to utilize with their studies. I found Quizlet very, very helpful, and I had to make some adjustments there because when I received one of my evaluations back, it had gone to true and false and multiple choice questions, which were not it, so I had to figure that out after my evaluations came back. The memoirs page also contains the online short essay test link, which I call a quiz technically, on Quizlet over the segment of the unit. The next page contains 3 maps. The Union's Grand Strategy Map, that's the Anaconda movement, and the Appomattox campaign map and the Appomattox Courthouse map with informational text on each. I asked the students to take and study those so they would understand troop movements, who did what, and so they could see Confederate and red and Union's movements in blue in the generals, and the dates are inserted into them, those maps, so that the students kind of get a timeline from April 2nd through the 9th. The video page, which is page 5, contains 3 YouTube videos. It's the Civil War in 4 minutes. That's a description of Ulysses S. Grant, and is done by professionals. Many of these are done by professors that are specialized in this study. The Civil War in 4 minutes is Robert E. Lee. And the third video is General Lee surrenders at Appomattox. I chose these videos to provide basic in-depth information on each of the Civil War generals and to provide information on the actual surrender, including actual footage taken at the surrender site. The assessment rubric is provided on the next page to provide students with guidance on what they will be graded upon within the upcoming argumentative essays. I actually did move this after I received my final evaluation back up to the front. I had originally thought I would put the rubric just before the test, and my intention was there so that students prior to the test would have a very good idea of what they were going to be graded on. And then when I received one of my evaluations back, they thought it should be in the front. So I moved that up close to the front. I think it's on page 3 now. The next page contains information describing the testing procedure and the hyperlink to the final assessment exam within Quizlet.com for this educational resource. Then I provided a conclusion page that provides a synopsis for students within the project. This includes how the resource will guide them in their future endeavors and the values provided within the resource. This is important as it ties to the Michigan standards, that if you go further down the standards, it ties everything together. The last 2 pages are reference pages. One is a reference page with attributes that I utilized, and a contact page to receive information, answer questions, and to make comments on the web page and studies incurred. Obstacles that I had, at first I had trouble uploading the video segments. I figured it out finally because I've only built, this is my second web page that I've built, so I had to challenge myself to learn more to insert the video segments. Changing graphics and photos to appropriate formats to insert within the web page. I found that my own photos within my computer were easy to get uploaded within it, but a lot of the photos, even the ones that are allowed to be used with the licensing, a lot of those are not in JPEG or GIF format, and they need to be switched. So I had to download them and then change them into the appropriate formats, and then re-upload them from my computer. The need to insert page numbers to enhance navigation for students which have not utilized the tools of navigation for a website. This was one of the things I had thought about prior to sending out my evaluations. It was completed after my first evaluation came back to make sure that everyone knew that I had inserted numbers. Well, then when my second evaluation came back, I decided I'm going to put buttons in there also, so that they're doubled out. There's a button and that will take them to the next page and the page number there, so that either way the students will know which way to go. So my main reason was ensuring that student navigation proceeds in the correct order. Okay, this is the demonstration of the website. As you can see here, the Weebly website is here for a link so that you can go to it and visualize what is on that website. The assessment of learning achieved is through Google Forms, an assessment rubric from iRubric, Quizlet study questions, Quizlet flashcards with self-correction procedures, written quizzes on Quizlet, and the Quizlet final assessment test. Resource implementation. I review the evaluations and update the website as needed. I added page numbers and ease of navigation. I fine-tuned the educational components within the site. I reviewed a review of prerequisite summaries, preparing for online resource on the American Civil War, demonstrated navigation tools for students and answer questions. I provide a hyperlink to the Weebly.com site, introducing navigation through the site to the students prior to startup. I encourage students to enjoy working through the resource and to move at their own pace, which is very important. Student assessment is implemented directly from within the format. The positives in the interactive online learning, students enjoy working with technology. Student interest is increased within online learning resources. Self-motivation is evident when the resource is interactive. Learning can be self-paced on their own time schedules. Opportunities are available to self-check their learning. It allows for higher level thinking and skill development. This resource may be utilized within a flipped classroom also. Evaluation of the resource. I provided information to access my resource and evaluation surveys to be completed by Ashley Raplanas and Heidi Marlos. So to receive feedback to enhance my learning resource. I created the Likert survey such that it could be utilized online and returned under the online format via attachment within an email. The evaluators are able to highlight the number they chose and add valuable comments at the end of the survey. This is my first survey that came back. This is from Ashley. Basically, it was the thing I needed to really work on here was the addition of labels or numbers on each page so that it would have ease of navigation with no question. I was navigating across the white lettering in the top from left to right and down. But by doing this change, it has made it very much easier to navigate. This is Heidi Marlowe's evaluation. She had a different perspective on that. All activities, tasks, and assessments align with learning objectives. She was rather neutral on that. And the other one she did disagree with was on number 5, the navigation. So I took and made adjustments. I did page numbers. I found out how to do that. I also added next page buttons so it would take it directly to the next page once you hit the bottom of each web page. The memoirs quiz, that was an interesting thing because I couldn't understand why she said that until I went right back into it, and I discovered that it had saved the original setup where everything was checked off, and it had not saved where I just did the essay questions on the check off and setting it up. So I finally figured out that by clicking after you do that to click new tasks at the base, and I did that as an experiment, it actually made it into the correct thing, which was an essay test or quiz. Both of them, actually. The reading assignments and segments that she wanted to have in there, she felt that it was too long of a reading assignment, which I technically had thought of it in segments, but hadn't actually put it down, and so I learned to take and put it down in segments. So within the web pages, you will see a group of readings where it says read this to this and this to this and what it was for. And so it also allowed for them to revert back to that in case they needed information. They could say, okay, the actual negotiations were in these set of pages. So they could find that. The economy items, that is in a set of pages also. My reflection, I enjoyed designing this resource, which I will utilize within the 8-week course I am creating online on the American Civil War. The evaluation process and feedback from the evaluators and my instructor have provided me with assessments to enhance this learning resource. I have added page numbers to each page and next page buttons, changed the order of a couple of pages within the design, basically the rubric was moved, and lowered the number of standards to ensure that I meet the criteria I have set. The creation of this instructional resource has proven valuable to myself. I feel it was a positive learning experience. I had never formatted a Likert survey, even though I'd taken them previously, and found that it too is a valuable resource that I have available within my tool bag. I have increased and developed new strategies for working with instructional design this semester, which I will value for many years to come. Thank you for watching my EDU 643 presentation.